I want to say this. It's not all about just George Floyd. Just George Floyd is one in a long line of people, human beings that have been crushed by white oppression in America since the get-go. America was founded on ideals that it has failed to live up to since the beginning. I mean, this is ridiculous. We got a president who is doing what he can to start a civil war, trying to create violent oppression, and very few people that I've heard want to play that. When I hear him talk, especially right now, I think of people like Milosevic, I think of people like Hitler, I think of people like Mussolini, weaklings who will cause a lot of violence because they are violent and crazy. I have to say that I believe that the energy that is felt by everybody about this brutal murder should be focused not on some of the things that has gone into. Focus that energy that is of anger and frustration into changing things. I've been reading up on nonviolent resistance throughout history and looking at videos, and it seems like this is the best time for mass nonviolent organization to change the system. And by nonviolence, I don't mean turning the other cheek and letting yourself get beat. And I sure don't mean running at people and beating them. And I don't mean pacifism. I mean proactively making change the same way that Mahatma Gandhi did, the same way that Dr. Martin Luther King did, the same way that the women's suffragettes did, organizing and forcing the system from the bottom up to change. Bernie Sanders had a point, and he is a civil rights kind of guy himself, which is extremely rare in politics. And I want to say that I think we got to start getting ready to do exactly what had to be done against Milosevic in Serbia, which was a mass movement to end his tyranny. And we have an opportunity to do that before the tyranny really starts in America, and I hope everybody finally realizes that that's what it's all about for him. He wants to be an authoritarian tyrant, and he doesn't give a shit about any of us. He doesn't care if any of us live or die. He just wants his crazy agenda. And then there's the militia, these weekend warrior wannabe whatever, running around with all their guns trying to incite fear and intimidation, boogaloo, all that crazy stuff going on. And I do believe that that everybody should be prepared to defend themselves non-violently in hand-to-hand combat, just as much as ideological combat. That's why I posted the YouTube channel Fight Science, and because it's all about defending yourself against aggressors who intend you harm, but not aggressively going after those who intend you harm, but to be able to effectively subdue those who intend you harm, like the militia. They need to be potentially checked if they cross that line. Which I hope they don't. It appears the revolution is being televised and live streamed, and we are in some scary fucking times, and Black Lives Matter, solidarity, running around and being out in public on these protests is dangerous, personally. I have friends and family who are at high risk for COVID-19, and it would be extremely irresponsible of me to be in large protests or crowds, and the social distancing rules and all the things that have been talked about by Dr. Fauci and the scientists, and seeing a lot of protesters running around, walking around without masks, speaking, has me concerned about the further spread of COVID-19. And I don't want anyone dying out here. I don't want anyone dying out there. I don't want anybody dying of COVID. I don't want anybody dying of, police brutality or oppression or violence. I don't like seeing violence and looting. And last night in Richmond, a group were out on 23rd Street trying to protect their businesses and keep the peace and keep outside influences from coming in and starting shit. And that's what it seems to be a lot. It isn't the people that live there so much as people coming in for their own ends, be it to loot and rob and steal and cause havoc, or to give people an excuse to come down hard and violent. And the more oppressive things get, the more it's going to escalate into something that nobody should see. I have an awareness of the Irish struggle for freedom, and it was like hundreds of years of violence and bloodshed, and I don't want to get into the ins and outs, who's right, who's wrong, but that just becomes a situation where two wrongs make it just really bad. But terrorism and bombings and explosive conflict is the only outcome that will come of police oppression, police state attitude, crushing the masses. It, historically speaking, is the worst way to go about anything. I'm glad of the police taking a knee with protesters and coming out and saying, hey, We're not for this. That is what is necessary. And one step further, to change the way of policing. Change it from, we're going to crush you motherfuckers, to, we're going to help you. And there are people that lived through the 1960s, and 1968 in particular was a very ugly year for America. It was the last major hot battle in the Cold War of the Civil War, which never ended. And anyone that looks at it and goes, oh, the Civil War ended in 1865, nope. It's still going. And it'll keep going as long as white people refuse to admit their history of being as bad as Milosevic, as bad as Adolf Hitler, as bad as Mussolini. Our history inspired Adolf Hitler. Now, that is not a good thing at all, but it's true. It's true. America was built on genocide and slavery. And make America great again is just some, the last-ditch efforts of white power trying to make America that again, and that will end badly. That is just how it will. I mean, you can't force a diverse population to live under their idea of white Christian values and expect it to just happen without resistance. And you can't turn back the clock to Jim Crow. Shit's changed. People are tired of that. People don't want to do that. White people are a minority. The fact that 50 to 75% of Americans do not support white supremacy should be a clear indication that either white supremacists need to learn to be more woke, which does happen, especially when they're not under the influence of a white supremacist Klan guy, George Wallace talking Confederate president like Donald Trump. Daryl Davis has managed to have conversations with a lot of Klan people, and even was best man at a wedding of a former Grand Wizard's daughter. It happens. I used to watch the show All in the Family. Archie was a bigot, but he was not irredeemable. People are not irredeemable most of the time. I make the exception for Trump, unfortunately. But a lot of decent human beings exist. And I still have Republican friends. Normal people that just are like, oh, you're Republican? Wow, I did not know that about you. Cool. As opposed to, oh my God, you're a Trumper. But it's not a bad thing, you know. One of the most stand-up guys that I've ever read about and was aware of, who was a Republican, was the late Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona. A very complicated history, but generally speaking, a profoundly decent human being who stood behind what was right, or what he believed was right, even if it went at odds of his own party and his own previous beliefs. He was able to change his beliefs to fit the facts. The problem with the very powerful and the very stupid is they can't. And that's a problem. If people can't change their views to fit the facts, but try to change the facts to fit their views, it's a very dangerous situation for those who don't fit their views. And that is the crux of the problem with the belief structure of Nazis and Klansmen, as opposed to just bigots. And there is a difference. And there's even a difference between a white supremacist and a fascist, or a Klansman, or a Nazi. And it's all the same to me. It's like ideologies. And the ideology of that kind of hatred cannot peacefully coexist with the ideology of peace and love and democracy. And therefore, it's a dangerous thing to have a continued voice to those who would destroy democracy. And I'm scared of it. I'm terrified. You know, where this country's head. It's hopefully, you know, at the end of the day, in the words of Dr. King, the road to justice is long, but it does prevail eventually. And I'm saying it wrong, but that's basically what he said. The path towards the universe bends towards justice, and I'd like to believe that. And I'm seeing that. And as a white man, you know, who has privilege, it is important to speak out against Karens, Kyles, and all these whiny people that'll call the cops on a person for living while black, having no idea that could get them killed, or not caring the black person. I was reading an article about a white woman with a black husband and black babies who had the cops called on her husband. And a white man saved his bacon. White anti-fascists and anarchists saved Colonel West's life, along with 20 others at Charlottesville. The same thing, time where Susan Hare was run over by some KKK fascist Nazi scumbags with a car. It is not enough to speak out against fascism, but to be willing to fight it, to lay your life on the line, to speak out and go, hey man, not fucking cool. And I hope those 4 cops who not only weren't hey man, or any of the other cops that weren't like, hey man, not fucking cool, stop, are held accountable. And, you know, cops start being held accountable for their shit. Finally, because that's the problem. When those that are allegedly pledged to serve and protect you are the ones that kill you, it is just wrong. As a white man, have been pulled over by police a lot for things as simple as a burned out headlight, or a broken taillight, or speeding, or just my car looking like the kind of car that would get stolen. Although frankly, I think the police were profiling me before they realized I was white, and then changed their tune. That's happened to me too. Like, oh, you're a white guy, so we're gonna treat you with respect now. And I've lived. Black people don't have that luxury. Brown people don't have that luxury at all. Getting pulled over for a broken taillight could be a death sentence. And as long as we live in a society like that, I have to speak out against it. We all have to speak out against it. Can't just let it happen and just turn a blind eye and just go, oh, it's not happening to me, so it doesn't matter. That's how societies fail. That's societies fall. That's how authoritarians and fascists take root. Oh, it doesn't concern me. I'll turn a blind eye. And then when those who turned a blind eye are the last ones left, they're rounded up too. That's how it works. That's how it works all the time. And people never learn. We gotta learn. We gotta stand together for what is right. Whites, even more so. Because when we speak out against the tyranny of whites, we stop the tyranny. When we say shit to a cop, get your fucking boot off that man's neck, we're not likely to get shot for it. No, certainly not as likely to. Because it's like, oh, it's just it's like us white people need to stop being the problem and be the ones that stand up to white power bullshit. What it means. And I'm not just talking like somebody that's never been in situations that were ugly. I mean, it's not related to this exactly, but it's about related to taking a stand and driving out people who would do harm. In 1998, my band, along with 10 other bands, making up about 35 to 40 people on a bus, were doing a guerrilla show in Las Vegas, California in August 1998, and it was 100 degrees and hot as fuck. And, it starts out being cool. It's a bunch of local hardcore bands, boring, kind of not great bands. I mean, I love hardcore, but they weren't really good ones. But that's not the point. I mean, good hardcore is hard to find, and most of it is old, British, Los Angeles, by people that could play other things. But anyway, I digress. So, okay, I'm a musician, so, that's kind of my first thing, and I'm a photographer, and peace and love and all that, and I kind of want to go back to that, and I want this whole thing to end so I could go back to playing in bands, Cope has been doing the disenfranchisement album release stuff. I've been doing that against tyranny and oppression, and reminding people on a regular basis that the bad people are vastly outnumbered by the good people, and those good people got to stand up and be like, oi! So it brings me back to where I was talking about we're playing, I'm filming with a camera, because, my video camera, the local bands, and before my band comes on, and I see Zeb, and I couldn't really see it very clearly because I was filming, but our friend Zeb, one of only two women on the bus with us, gets hit by a bottle. And it's still not clear whether that was intentional or just somebody being an idiot throwing a bottle, and she just was there. But the end result was Keith from Minot, who was the first band that played after they were done, says, hey, there's 35 of us on this bus. You better get the fuck out. And, which made a few people a little nervous, like that kind of stand, because it it could go sideways and get very violent very quickly. But it was a necessary stand, and I agree with it. So there was no film footage of it because I put the camera down. All 35 of us stood in a circle, like, you will not pass, you will not hurt us. And they tried to intimidate, walking around, circling us, and it was just like, no. So I'm staring them down with something like, I'm a big guy, I can intimidate the fuck out of somebody if I have to. And I was. And I just was staring them down, and they were like, maybe not this guy. He was walking right around me. That's taking a stand. You have to do that. You can't be neutral. You have to be like, when there's injustice, you have to stand. You cannot be silent. You cannot be complicit. Ever. Because an injustice to one is an injustice to all. And Fannie Lou Hamer spoke of that too, as well as Dr. King, that an injustice to one is an injustice to everybody. And the way I see it is, we are all George Floyd, we are all Trayvon Martin, we're all, I can't even remember all the names. And as Rodney King said, after he was beat down by 4 Los Angeles punk-ass pig cops, why can't we all just get along? And that's the answer. Why can't we? 2,000 years after Jesus was nailed to a cross saying, why can't we be nice to each other for a change? We're still saying, why can't we be nice to each other for a change? That's all we ask. That's all any sane person asks, just to live their fucking life in peace. And it doesn't matter if you're a criminal or not. Being executed by the police is just wrong. Period. And if I saw these protesters be executed by the police, which I do not condone, but the fact is, if they're getting a free pass, and one black man in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, getting killed. Minnesota. I got friends and family down there. Richmond, the San Francisco Bay Area. This is my area, And people having to defend their property in Richmond, blocks away from where I lived, from 2002 to 2014, 23rd Street. I lived, I don't know, maybe a mile away in a housing project on Carlson. I mean, that's close to a lot of people. And there are a lot of people living there, and that area has a lot of problems anyway, with being poor and being oppressed. And then to have people coming in and starting shit is just like, oh, hell no. Senator Bernie Sanders came to that neighborhood to speak to people. Has anyone else? But I digress. No, it's like, enough. I do not have the answers. The questions, but not the answers. I have looked at videos of men and women who were actually slaves speaking about what their life was like. I have listened to Fannie Lou Hamer, a sharecropper from, I forget what state, Mississippi, I think, speak out about her life. And this is everyday life for blacks now. And the only reason why we haven't had a crazy amount of school shootings is because the schools are closed. But yeah, there's I Can't Breathe, there's Black Lives Matter, and there is March for Our Lives. And the only reason why we're not having to do that right now is because the schools are closed. People's babies are getting killed in school. And the Republicans couldn't give a fuck because they're taking NRA money. The Democrats have their problems, I agree, but the Republicans are the ones that won't do shit. Not one fucking thing about any of this because they don't give a shit. It doesn't affect them. They're not black. They're not minorities. They don't have to live in those cities. You know, I think politicians should have to live where their constituents are. You know, and not the beautiful area of town, but live in the shit part of town. You know, the bad part of town, the part of town that the cops decide to move from, that part of town. Make it a better town. Live there and change it. I guarantee you, if politicians came from war zones or lived in war zones, shit would change quick. We need representation from the hood, from where it's coming from. We need people that can relate to struggle, that have lived struggle in positions of power, in positions of, you know, be it the police or the city commissioner or the president or the senators, all of that. We need that. We need to have people that are not out of touch with reality, living in Washington culture where the action isn't. We need a president that's out there talking to us that are hurting. Not some president who is having people tear gassed and oppressed more just for a photo op. President George Wallace, President Jefferson Davis, Confederate, not American. Nazi, not American. KKK, not American. Trump represents who we are and have always been as a country, the ugly. And we are ugly as fuck sometimes. We need people in power that appeal to our better angels, not our worst base instincts. And every single one of us is capable of xenophobia, bigotry, sexism, hatred for the other, fear of the other. It's kind of how we're hardwired. However, what makes a person a better person isn't the lack of racism, sexism, etc. It is not being ruled by that, not being proud of it, not being willfully ignorant. As the song goes from Alvin Q, everyone's a little bit racist, and we are. I am. We all are. But we all must do better. I love Jim Jeffries used to sign off his show, "Good night, and we can all do a little bit better." And it's true. Yeah. Power to the people. People have power. Love y'all, and I'm out.